Welcome back to the Audacity of Him, the channel where we take a long, hard look at the men who possess the unearned confidence of a mediocre white guy with a clipboard, and we violently humble them. If you've ever lived in a suburb, you know the type. The male Karen, the homeowners association dictator, the guy who peaked in middle management, got laid off, and decided to take out his existential dread on the entire cul-de-sac. He's the guy out there on a Tuesday morning with a literal ruler, measuring your Bermuda grass to ensure it doesn't violate the sacred 2.5-inch mandate. But what happens when one of these pompous, power-tripping assholes picks a fight with the exact wrong woman? What happens when a male Karen tries to use imaginary HOA bylaws to bully a woman who literally dictates the municipal code for a living? Spoiler alert, it ends in tears, massive fines, and a bulldozer. Grab your tea, people. This one is going to be incredibly satisfying. A few years ago, I bought a beautiful house in a quiet, upscale neighborhood called Whispering Pines. It was gorgeous. Mature trees, great property values, and quiet streets. But Whispering Pines had a dark, festering secret, and his name was Richard. Richard was the president of the Whispering Pines HOA. And let me tell you, this prick ran our neighborhood like he was the supreme leader of a rogue nation. He drove around in a custom golf cart with a flashing amber light on top, I shit you not, handing out citations like he was a beat cop in a war zone. He once fined a single mother $200 because her garbage cans were left on the curb for 3 hours past the 8 a.m. pickup time. He threatened to tow a teenager's car because one tire was parked an inch over the property line. Richard was an absolute fucking nightmare. He thrived on intimidation, relying on the fact that most people are conflict averse and don't know their legal rights. But Richard didn't know me. I'm a private person. I don't talk about my job with my neighbors because, frankly, I deal with enough bullshit at work. My neighbors just knew I worked in local government. What they didn't know, and what Richard profoundly failed to realize, is that my actual title is the head city zoning inspector for the municipality. I write the codes. I enforce the permits. I am the literal god of property development in our county. What the city says goes, and an HOA's rules are completely legally subordinate to my office's municipal code. The drama started in early spring. I love gardening. It's my therapy. So I decided to build a small, beautiful cedarwood garden shed in my backyard to store my tools and potting soil. Now, before I ordered the materials, I did what any responsible homeowner and literal zoning inspector would do. I checked the local laws. According to City Ordinance 14B, outbuildings under 120 square feet do not require a city permit. Furthermore, I checked the Whispering Pines HOA declarations, the legally binding ones filed with the county clerk, not the bullshit ones Richard made up in his head. The HOA rules stated that sheds were permitted as long as they weren't visible from the street and matched the color scheme of the primary dwelling. I built my shed at exactly 110 square feet. I painted it to match my house. It was tucked away behind an 8-foot privacy fence. Completely legal, completely compliant. I had just finished putting the hinges on the door when I heard it. The whining electric hum of Richard's golf cart. He must have seen the delivery truck drop off the lumber earlier in the week, and he had been prowling my perimeter like a khaki-clad vulture ever since. The next morning, I walked out to find a neon green citation taped to my front door, not placed in the mailbox, taped aggressively to the wood, leaving a sticky residue. The citation read, "Unauthorized construction, violation of Article 7, Section 4, immediate removal required, fine, $500 per day until compliance is met." $500 a day? For a garden shed? I actually laughed out loud. I went inside, poured myself some coffee, and pulled up the HOA charter. Article 7, Section 4 didn't exist. The charter ended at Article 6. Richard was just making up imaginary laws to extort money from people he thought were too stupid or too intimidated to push back. And right then, I made a decision. I could have emailed him right then, sent him my credentials, and shut it down. But where is the fun in that? When a man with unearned audacity hands you a shovel, you don't stop him from digging. You wait until he's 6 feet deep, and then you throw the dirt back in. The tension boiled over 3 days later. I was out front, watering my hydrangeas, when Richard's golf cart screeched to a halt at the end of my driveway. He didn't just walk up to me, he marched, clipboard in hand, aviators shielding his eyes, chest puffed out like a damn pigeon. "You've ignored my citations," he barked, not even offering a hello. I looked up, playing the part of the confused, overwhelmed female homeowner. I made my voice soft. "Hi, Richard. I saw the note, but I'm a little confused. The shed isn't visible from the street, and it's well under the size limit for a permit." He actually chuckled, a deep, guttural, condescending chuckle. He stepped entirely too close to me, violating my personal space, towering over me. "Listen here, little lady," he said, tapping his pen against his clipboard. "I don't care what you think you know about permits. This is my neighborhood. I decide what gets built and what gets torn down. You didn't submit architectural plans to the committee, which is me, and you didn't pay the $300 review fee." "But Richard," I stammered, holding back a smirk, "there is no review fee in the charter." He cut me off, his face turning an ugly shade of plum. "I am the president of the HOA. The charter is what I say it is. You owe the association $1,500 in back fines. If that illegal eyesore isn't torn down by the time we hold the community meeting this Friday, I am calling a contractor to bulldoze it myself, and I will put a lien on your fucking house to pay for the demolition. Do you understand me?" He was breathing heavily, waiting for me to cry, waiting for me to apologize. I just looked at him, my expression perfectly blank. "I understand completely, Richard. Let's discuss it at the meeting on Friday." He scoffed, turned on his heel, and stomped back to his golf cart. "Bring your checkbook, sweetheart," he called out as he drove away. "Oh, Richard, you stupid, stupid man. You didn't just poke the bear. You poked the bear, slapped its mother, and stole its picnic basket." I went straight to my home office and logged into the city's secure zoning database. You see, Richard lived 3 houses down from me. And Richard had a pride and joy. A massive, extravagant 2-tier mahogany deck in his backyard, complete with a built-in outdoor kitchen, a pergola, and a sunken hot tub. It was the crown jewel of his suburban kingdom, the place where he hosted his obnoxious cronies. I pulled up his property file. I wanted to see the permits for that magnificent deck. I typed in his address. Search. The screen loaded. 0 results found. I couldn't believe my luck. My jaw hit the floor. The pompous prick had built a $50,000 structural addition, complete with plumbing and high-voltage electrical, and he hadn't pulled a single goddamn city permit. But I didn't stop there. I pulled up the satellite imaging software my office uses for land surveys. I measured the distance from his unpermitted deck to the rear property line. City code mandates a minimum 15-foot setback from the property line for any permanent structure. Richard's deck? It was sitting exactly 3 feet from the fence line. It was encroaching on a municipal utility easement. It was a code enforcement bloodbath. Unpermitted electrical, unpermitted plumbing, violation of setback requirements, building over a utility easement. Richard wasn't just in violation, his deck was a massive illegal liability. I printed every single document. I printed the satellite photos. I stamped them with my official seal as the head city zoning inspector. I slid them into a sleek black folder. I was going to the meeting, and I was bringing hell with me. Friday night arrived. The Whispering Pines Community Center smelled like stale coffee, floor wax, and shattered dreams. About 50 residents were there. Richard sat at the head table, flanked by two of his HOA cronies. He looked like Mussolini of the suburbs, smug and tyrannical. He blasted through the mundane agenda items, approving the landscaping budget, complaining about dog poop, until he reached the final item: new business. Richard stood up, grabbing the microphone. He looked directly at me, sitting quietly in the third row, clutching my black folder. "Ladies and gentlemen," Richard boomed, his voice echoing in the small room, "we have a serious issue of insubordination in our community. One of our residents has chosen to illegally construct a structure on her property without board approval, flagrantly ignoring my direct citations. We cannot allow anarchy in Whispering Pines." The room murmured. People shifted uncomfortably, glancing at me. "I have drafted a resolution," Richard continued, holding up a piece of paper, "authorizing the immediate hire of a demolition crew to remove the illegal shed and billing the $1,500 in fines and all demolition costs directly to the homeowner. I will brook no argument on this." I stood up. I didn't rush. I smoothed down my skirt, picked up my black folder, and walked down the center aisle. The room went dead silent. "Richard," I said, my voice carrying clearly without a microphone, "before you vote on bulldozing my property, I think we need to clarify a few things regarding jurisdiction." Richard rolled his eyes. "Sit down. You don't have the floor, and your opinion on HOA jurisdiction is irrelevant." "It's actually very relevant," I replied, reaching the front table. I opened my purse. I pulled out my heavy Silver City badge, attached to my leather credential wallet. I slapped it down onto the table, right on top of his clipboard. The metal clacked loudly against the wood. "Because my name isn't just on the deed to my house, it's on the city's payroll. I am the head city zoning inspector for this municipality. I literally write the building codes for this entire county." I swear to God, you could hear a pin drop. Richard's face froze. The smug, shit-eating grin evaporated, replaced by a pale, sickly shade of gray. The two cronies sitting next to him physically leaned away from him like he was suddenly contagious. "Whoa, what?" Richard stammered, his voice suddenly 3 octaves higher. I opened the black folder. I pulled out the city ordinances. "My shed," I said loudly, addressing the entire room now, "is 110 square feet. According to City Ordinance 14B, which supersedes any and all HOA charters, it requires no permit. Furthermore, I have reviewed the actual, legally filed HOA declarations. The bylaws you cited on your neon sticker do not exist. You fabricated them to extort money from me." Richard swallowed hard. He looked around the room. The neighbors were staring at him, realizing the tyrant had just stepped on a landmine. "Now," I continued, turning my gaze back to Richard, my voice dropping to a dangerous, icy whisper. "Let's talk about your property, Richard." I pulled out the satellite imagery and slapped it onto the table. "That beautiful 2-tier mahogany deck in your backyard? The one with the outdoor kitchen and the high-voltage hot tub wiring?" I tapped the paper. "I ran the property records this morning. You never pulled a single permit for any of it." The room gasped. In our affluent neighborhood, unpermitted additions were a massive scandal. That's a mistake," Richard sputtered, sweat visibly beading on his forehead. I filed the paperwork years ago." "Don't lie to me, Richard," I snapped, the authority of my office fully taking over. "I am the paperwork, but it gets worse. You built your structural addition exactly 3 feet from your rear property line. City code mandates a 15-foot setback, which means your $50,000 deck is built directly on top of a municipal water main easement." I reached into the folder one last time. I pulled out a bright red piece of paper, the exact same shade of red our city uses for stop work and demolition orders. So, as the head zoning inspector, I am officially issuing you this citation, I said, handing it to his trembling hand. You have unpermitted electrical work, unpermitted plumbing, and a structural violation of a city easement. You are facing a fine of $2,000 per day until the violation is corrected. I leaned in, so only he and the front row could hear me. And the only way to correct a structural easement violation, Richard, is to tear the entire deck down to the grass. You have 30 days to demolish your illegal structure, or the city will hire a contractor to bulldoze it for you, and we will place a lien on your fucking house to pay for it. Do you understand me? I used his exact words against him. The poetry of it was almost overwhelming. Richard didn't speak. He couldn't. He just stared at the red citation in his shaking hands, his empire crumbling around him in real time. The room erupted, not with sympathy for Richard, but with cheers. The neighbors he had terrorized for years started clapping. A guy in the back row actually whistled. I didn't stick around to watch him cry. I picked up my empty folder, turned my back on the HOA President, and walked out of the community center, the sound of applause ringing in my ears. The aftermath was swift and brutal. Richard couldn't appeal the citation because the photographic and satellite evidence was irrefutable. His beloved deck, the source of his backyard vanity, had to be completely demolished. It cost him over $10,000 in demolition fees and hauling costs, on top of the fines he had to pay the city for the unpermitted electrical work. He resigned as HOA president the very next morning via a 2-sentence email. 2 months later, a for sale sign went up in his front yard. He couldn't handle the humiliation of living in a neighborhood where everyone knew he had been violently out-Karened by the law itself. He moved out quietly in the middle of the night. As for me, I'm still here. The neighborhood elected a new HOA board made up of reasonable, normal human beings who don't carry clipboards or measure grass. My cedar shed is still standing in the backyard, holding my potting soil and my gardening tools, and every time I look at it, I pour myself a glass of wine, take a sip, and smile, knowing that sometimes karma doesn't just come back around. Sometimes karma has a badge, a municipal code book, and absolutely zero tolerance for your bullshit. And that, my friends, is the audacity of him. But more importantly, it's the audacity of us not putting up with it anymore. If you enjoyed watching a suburban dictator get stripped of his power and his unpermitted hot tub, hit that like button. Make sure you subscribe to the channel for more stories of men who found out exactly who they were messing with. Have you ever dealt with an HOA nightmare? Let me know down in the comments. I read every single one. Until next time, keep your permits in order and don't let anyone with a clipboard tell you what to do. Stay audacious.